Chapter 42 Remembrance of Dreams. Ran led the subdued group downstairs to the library via the kitchen. He took 5 steps in before he realised the others had stopped in the doorway. They were staring at Loial, who was reading a book with a cat on his lap. The Ogier stood and bowed formally to his friends, and Rand introduced everyone. Loial told Egwene that Rand spoke often of her, and seeing the group's confused looks, Rand told them that he's an Ogier. Loial asked where the Aes Sedai was, and Rand told him that she's upstairs with Mat. They all sat, which released some of the tension, and Perrin asked if the Steading are really havens. The Ogier happily launched into describing Steading, and all about his travels outside. Loial loved to talk, and always seemed to feel that each story needed 200 to 300 years' worth of background to explain it. His sense of time was different too. He talked of leaving his Steading as if it were a few months ago, when in fact it had been more than 3 years. Rand got lost in thought about Mat and his bloody dagger which might kill him. He was tired of travel, and if he couldn't go home once Mat was healed, then he wanted to go somewhere where no one had ever heard of Aes Sedai. The library door opened to reveal Mat with Moraine's hand on his shoulder, watching him carefully. Mat looked healthy, giving everyone a hesitant smile, then looked in shock at Loial, as if seeing the Ogier for the first time. He shrugged and began to apologise, saying he knows he's been acting oddly, and doesn't remember much. In fact, everything since Whitebridge and Tom is hazy, and got worse from there. He asked them not to hold what he said against him when he was crazy. Perrin joked that he's always been crazy, as Nynaeve, tears in her eyes, smiled and told him that no one blames him. Everyone began talking, telling Mat how happy they were to see him well, and he began to banter back with them. He absently touched his coat and Rand caught his breath. Quietly, Moraine told them, "Yes, he still has the dagger. I cannot take it away from him without killing him. The binding lasted too long and grew too strong. It must be unknotted in Tar Valon. It is beyond me or any lone Aes Sedai, even with an Angreal." Rand pointed out that he looked well now, but would the Fades and Dark Friends still be able to find them while he has the dagger? Moraine told them that she's contained the evil for now. If the Fades are close enough to sense it, they'll already be right on top of them. She has cleansed Mat for now, but it will eventually return unless he gets help in Tar Valon. And Rand said it was just as well that was where they were headed. Loial stood up and introduced himself to Moraine, remarking that the Steading offers sanctuary to any servants of the light. Moraine thanked him but told him not to be free with that offer, when all the Aes Sedai in Caemlyn are red azure except for her. She remarked on how she's surprised to see an Ogier outside. So few Ogier leave the Steading these days. Loial explained that he wanted to see the groves and the cities he read of in his books. The elders thought him odd for wanting to travel. They don't believe there's anything worth seeing, and he hopes to change their minds. Moraine then tried to dismiss Loial, so she could discuss matters with the others. Loial looked at Rand confused, so the boy told her that he promised to let Loial join them. She nodded, murmuring about the wheel weaving, and asked Lan to make sure they were not overheard. Moraine walked up to the fireplace and looked over at the group. She told them that they cannot remain in Caemlyn for long. The Dark One has eyes in the city already. They haven't found them yet, and now she's set wards to protect the inn. But eventually they'll realise there's a part of Caemlyn they're prevented from entering. Hopefully they'll be long gone by then, but she dare not set a ward against Dark Friends, as that would light a signal fire to the Myrdrall. Also, there are Whitecloaks in the city looking for Perrin and Egwene. Rand was surprised and said he thought they were searching for him and Mat. Moraine asked why he would think that, and he told her about the Whitecloaks that said they were after a pair of Two Rivers folk. What else was he meant to think? Loial remarked that the children wouldn't have anything to do with Elida, making the Aes Sedai ask sharply what Elida has to do with Rand. Rand explained the story of falling off the wall, meeting Elaine and Gawain, and then the Queen and Elida. He remarked on how beautiful Morghese is, like in the stories, and how the other boys would have liked Gawain. They all stared at him until he exclaimed, "Blood and ashes! I just climbed up the wall for a look at the false dragon. I didn't do anything wrong." Mat joked that's what he always says, while Egwene asked who Elaine was. Perrin remarked, "A queen? You really have had adventures. All we met were Tinkers and Whitecloaks. On the whole, singing with the Tinkers was more fun than the Whitecloaks." Loial told them, "The Tuatha'an live for their songs. I met some a few years back and they wanted to learn our tree songs. Actually, the trees won't listen to very many anymore, and not many Ogier learn the songs. I have a scrap of that talent, so Elder Arrant insisted I learn. I taught the Tuatha'an what they could learn when they came to Steading Shantai, but the trees never listen to humans." Moraine tried to quiet Loial, but he asked Moraine if he could query something. He'd always wanted to ask an Aes Sedai if he met one. They have the knowledge of Tar Valon's libraries. She curtly told him yes if he could be brief. Loial gathered his thoughts and said,
A man came to Stedding Shanghai a little time ago, which wasn't unusual at the time as many refugees fled the Loial War. He was at the point of death but had no wounds. The elders thought it might be something an Aes Sedai had done, since once within the steading he improved quickly. He stayed for a few months, then disappeared without a word. But before he went, he told us a tale he intended to take to Tar Valon. He said the Dark One intended to blind the eye of the world and slay the great serpent, kill time itself. The elders said he was sound of mind, but what I wanted to ask was, can the Dark One do that? Kill time itself and blind the eye of the great serpent?
The Aes Sedai stood frowning in thought, instead of answering the Ogier. Perrin said that that's the same as what the Tinkers told them, and Egwene said, "Yes, the Aiel story." Moraine asked what that story was, and Perrin began. Some Tinkers were crossing the Aiel waste and found a dying Aiel woman, who told the Tinkers what Loial just said. The Dark One, Sightblinder, intends to blind the eye of the world. This was 3 years ago. Does it mean something? Moraine told him perhaps everything, and Rand saw that her mind was racing. Perrin suddenly exclaimed, "But Alzaman!" bringing the room to a total silence. The boys all shared a look, and Perrin continued to explain that he just remembered where he'd heard about the Eye of the World before, and he asked Mat and Rand if they did too. Mat said he didn't want to remember, but Perrin insisted that they had to tell the Aes Sedai. It's important and they can't keep it a secret anymore. Moraine snapped that they'd tell her, seeming to brace herself for a blow. Rand didn't want to answer or remember any more than Mat did, but he realised that Perrin was right. He told Moraine they'd been having dreams, feeling sick at recalling the physical effects of them, the thorn in his finger, the sunburn from the fireball. He explained. Maybe they weren't dreams exactly, but Alzaman was in them. He said all sorts of things, but once he said the Eye of the World would never serve me. Perrin said that he was told the same, and Mat nodded along, then asked if Moraine was angry with them. She'd been studying them hard, then said, "I am angrier with myself, but I did ask you to tell me if you had any dreams. Had I known after the first, there may have been something I could do. There hasn't been a Dreamwalker in Tar Valon for nearly 1,000 years, but I could have tried. It's too late now. Each time the Dark One touched you, he made the next touch easier. Perhaps my presence can shield you somewhat. But even then, remember the stories of the Forsaken binding men to them? Strong men who had fought the Dark One from the start. Those stories are true, and none of the Forsaken had a tenth of the strength of their master. Not Agenor, Lanthea, not Balthamal or Dimondred, not even Ishamael, the betrayer of hope himself." Nynaeve and Egwene were staring at the boys, faces drained of blood with fear and horror. Bran worried if they were afraid of them or for them, then asked Moraine what they can do. She told them to stay near her. The protection of touching the true source can extend around her a little. They can defend themselves if they have the strength for it, but they must find it within themselves. Perrin sounded resigned as he said, "I think I've already found my protection." He didn't sound happy about it. Moraine agreed with him, and Perrin dropped his eyes. She continued to say that there are limits to the Dark One's power. Yield for an instant, and he'll have a string to their hearts that may never be able to cut. Deny him, and his power fails. He can send Trollocs, Myrddraal and Drakkar after them, but he cannot make them his unless they let him. Mat growled, "I don't want him inside my head again. Isn't there any way to keep him out?" Moraine shook her head and said, "Loial has nothing to fear, and neither do Egwene nor Nynaeve. Out of the mass of humanity, the Dark One can only touch an individual by chance, unless that person sought it. For a time at least, you three are central to the pattern. A web of destiny is being woven, and every thread leads straight to you. What else did he say to you?" Perrin told her that Baalzaman said one of them was chosen, and laughed about who they were chosen by. Either they serve him or die, and even then they would serve him. Mat added that he said the Amelin Seat would try to use them, just like Tar Valon used Davian. Perrin added the name Rowlin Darksbane, and Rand added Urien Stonebow and Gwaia Amalasan. Rand didn't tell her the name Logain, which he had just remembered. Thoughts of Moraine possibly wanting to use them as a false dragon ran through his head. He was confused. Did Aes Sedai hunt down false dragons? Rand asked Moraine pointedly if she recognised any of the names, and did they mean anything. She replied, "The Father of Lies is a good name for the Dark One. It was always his way to sow seeds of doubt. If you believe him, it's the first step towards surrender, and if you do, he will make you his." Rand recalled Tam's words, that an Aes Sedai never lies, but the truth she speaks may not be the truth you think you hear. and she hadn't answered his question. Egwene cried in Nynaeve's arms, who also looked like she wanted to cry as well. Loial told Moraine.
They are all ta'veren.
He seemed excited about it, wanting to see what the pattern wove. Loial looked incredulous at the Ogier, but Loial just shrugged. Moraine told them. So they are. 3 of them where I expected 1. A great many things have happened that I didn't expect. This news concerning the Eye of the World changes much. For a time the pattern does seem to be swirling around the 3 of you, just as Loial said, and the swirl will grow greater before it becomes less. Sometimes being ta'veren means the pattern is forced to bend around you, and sometimes it means the pattern forces you to the path needed. The web can still be woven many ways, and some of those designs would be disastrous, for you and the world. We cannot remain in Caemlyn, but Shadowspawn will be on us whichever road we take within 10 miles. Now at this moment we hear of a threat to the Eye of the World from 3 different and independent sources. The pattern is forcing our path, but which hand directs it? Has the Dark One's prison weakened him enough to exert that much control? Nynaeve snapped that there's no need for talk like that. It'll only frighten them. Moraine asked. But not you? It frightens me. Fear cannot affect our course though. Whether this is a trap or timely warning, we must reach the Eye of the World quickly. The Green Man must know of the threat. Rand started at hearing about the Green Man, but Loial looked worried. Moraine continued to say that she cannot risk stopping by Tar Valon. Time is trapping them. Even if they could ride out of Caemlyn unhindered, it will take weeks to reach the Blight, and she fears they don't have that time. Everyone exclaimed about the Blight, but Moraine ignored them all. The pattern presents a crisis, and at the same time a way to surmount it. If I did not know it was impossible, I would almost believe the Creator has taken a hand in this. There is a way. Smiling to herself, she turned to Loial and told him there was once an Ogier Grove and Waygate in Caemlyn. The new city has spread out over it, but the Waygate must still be here. She knows not many Ogier learn the ways now, but one with the talent and knowledge of the old songs of growing must be drawn to such knowledge. She then pointedly asked Loial, Do you know the ways, Loial? The Ogier shifted uncomfortably and admitted he did. Moraine asked if he could find the path to Faldara, and he said he didn't recognise the name. She told him that in the Trolloc Walls it was called Mafal de Daranel, and Loial replied that he knows it. She carried on to assume he can find them a path there, a curious thing where all normal roads are closed to them. She learnt of the threat, and in the same place is one who can take them there in days. Whether it's the Creator, Fate, or the Dark One, the pattern has chosen their path.
No,
Loial rumbled like thunder, shocking everyone.
If we enter the ways, we will all die, or be swallowed by the shadow.
Thanks for listening. Please like, share and subscribe and help get a new channel off the ground. Thank you.